how much time should I give students to engage in one of these group questions? The favorite phrase that I think we use in psychology is, it depends. But it depends on the sorts of questions that you write, so it's up to you to determine this. You can do this both inductively and deductively, or one or the other. But what I did was I thought about my question. So if I ask a question, if it's some sort of creative or critical question, how long would I expect people need just to start thinking about this themselves, quietly, and then to start kind of putting an idea out there at the beginning of the time, and give them between 30 seconds and a minute for that, perhaps. But if it's something that's obvious, we've just talked about the content, then they should be able to dive in it immediately, and they don't need any time for that stage of the group work. That's our first stage. The second stage is one that I very actively scaffold, which is getting each individual member of the group to voice her or his opinion. And this is something that's facilitated by the facilitator and the timekeeper in concert. But how much time does each person need to voice a full thought? If it's something that I can express in a yay or nay very quickly, little time. Those aren't the sorts of questions I like to ask, though. If the person says, well, this is my thought, and they weave an entire narrative, they may need minutes to 2 minutes for that sort of activity. And so then just multiply that by the number of group members that you assign to your groups. Then at the end, what I seek is consensus from the group. So instead of seeing all of these disparate opinions, I ask for one opinion coming from the entire group, or one answer coming from the entire group. Now, if it's a really critical question that I think is going to be contentious, I want them to have more time for that, because coming to consensus will not necessarily be an easy thing. But if it's relatively straightforward, and it's just a matter perhaps of picking the best of the 4 answers that the group thinks came up in the individual contribution stage, that may not need as much time. So I've given you a lot of things to think about. In my experience, it's about 7 minutes. Remember, there are 4 students in the group, and so depending on how much of that startup time is required, there are basically 4 minutes for individual contribution, and then 3 minutes to come to a consensus and record it out and make sure that the story is straight for the presenter.